Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lust, the Pond Boss. So I thought tonight I'd start off the conversation talking about population dynamics, which, that's not really a favorite topic of a lot of people, but I'm going to do the best I can to make it entertaining. So population dynamics of a fishery, the population dynamics of a lake or a pond. Whenever I go design a lake and I start thinking about population dynamics, of course, you guys that have been around me know here's the 5 things. So when I go design a lake, but the very first things I look at is I want to make sure the water's happy, that the habitat is what all the different sizes of all the different species of fish need to be able to thrive. Make sure we got the right food chain. It takes 10 pounds of bait fish for a game fish to gain a pound. It takes 10 pounds of food at every level, every trophic level of the food chain. It takes 10 pounds of plankton to grow a pound of insects. It takes 10 pounds of insects to grow a pound of bigger insects. It takes 10 pounds of bigger insects to grow a pound of fish, small fish. It takes 10 pounds of small fish to grow a pound of medium-sized fish. It takes 10 pounds of medium-sized fish, yada, 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 yada. You guys know the drill on that. So when I start thinking about population dynamics, basically, here's the science behind that. Population dynamics are based on birthrate, the recruitment, the growth rates, mortality. And mortality is not necessarily related to fish that die. It's related to fish that get eaten. So mortality rates are pretty dadgum high in a healthy fishery. The mortality rates of fish in a really healthy fishery is probably going to knock on the door of 95%. And that sounds a little scary, but that's the reality of it. And so when you know that going in, then you can start planning accordingly and understand it and know how the different trophic levels of the food chain work. Population dynamics are kind of built on models. There's some models out there where you can plug in some numbers and see how that thing works. It's also based on sustainable management practices. Are you feeding the fish? Sustainable management practices means the right kind of harvest. It means that you have enough of predator fish of certain sizes that can feed on the prey fish and keep them active, in the sense that whenever prey fish get eaten, the remaining prey fish try to fill the gap by reproducing. That's why we use bluegill as the primary source of food, as the backbone of the food chain for a largemouth bass lake, because bluegill can spawn multiple times a year depending on where you are. I think the concepts to wrap your brains around is that there's recruitment, there's growth rates, there's mortality, there's models that you can begin to figure out when you're tracking relative weights of your bass or your bluegills or a combination of both. There's sustainable management practices such as feeding, maintaining fertility, managing aquatic plants. So sustainable management practices is that something that's kind of like an art that we all have to kind of figure out how we're going to be able to play the game. And then there's overfishing, underfishing, and all those things kind of play a role in the population dynamics of your pond or lake. Brent Ruggieri says, you said that not all bass you transplant from one body of water to another will adapt the same. Should I bring bass into my pond from another pond and not necessarily a lake or river? No. So here's the way that works. The population dynamics, they fit into that part of the deal, that part of the game. So let's take Brent. Brent's got a good question here. So he said that not all bass you transplant from one body of water. Doesn't matter the body of water. Doesn't matter if it's a river, a lake, a stream, or a puddle. When you take a fish, especially a game fish, that has grown up in that body of water over there, then you move it to this body of water over here, they're not necessarily going to make that transition. And the reason is that fish respond through a process called plasticity. Plasticity is a biological concept where, with fish, since that's what we're talking about, you take a fish and you grow it up in that environment and it thrives, and you take it from that environment and you move it to another one. It doesn't matter how good that environment is. If that fish can't recondition or respond to that new habitat, it's going to deteriorate. And my experience has told me that we'll just play the math game. Let's say we take 100 adult largemouth bass that grew up in these environments over here, and we move them into your perfect conditions. 20 of them are going to do great. 15 or 20 of them are going to be okay. The rest are not going to grow, or they're going to deteriorate and die. And it's because those fish don't have any capability of reasoning. They don't know how to think. They don't know how to adjust. And therefore, they won't make the cut. And even if they're fantastic fish, doesn't mean they're going to do it, that they're going to make it. So the answer to that is it doesn't matter if they're coming from a pond or a river or a lake. And it actually, if you think about this, fish, let's take predator fish like a largemouth bass that grew up in a river. It's used to moving water. It's used to having to seek out its prey because it's got to go chase it down somewhere. Whereas in a pond, they can ambush. Where in a river, ambushing is not likely because those bait fish are always on the move. So the game fish are going to have to go seek them out, try to find them, and take them out and feed on them. So fish coming from a river, the percentages are probably even higher for failure than coming out of a pond. What is the mortality rate on transplanted fish? I'm going to tell you the mortality rate's 100%. But depends on when they die. So let's kind of tackle that deal. Let's say, Brent, that you go and move, let's say you move 100 bass that are 3 to 5 years old, and their expected lifespan is 8 to 10 years. Say they're northern strain bass. Say you move 100 bass that are 3 to 5 years old, and you're in the northern tier states. The mortality rate, you won't know that from those transplanted fish until the third year. By the third year, the fish that are going to deteriorate have disappeared. The fish that are going to thrive look like footballs. They're going to do really, really well. So out of 100, there'll be 25 that are just really thriving. There'll be another 15 or 20, 25 maybe. They're doing pretty good. All the rest are staying the same or deteriorating, or they're going to be gone. And I have transplanted a lot of fish over the years, and it took me a long time to begin to figure this out. And I was able to begin to figure it out by electrofishing these different lakes. And over a long span of time, you can really see fish that you've transplanted and tagged and you've tracked, and you can see that there is going to be a mortality rate. So I'm going to tell you the mortality rate, the 3-year mortality rate of transplanted adult fish, largemouth bass, is going to be at least 50%. That's my answer, and I think I can justify that. Oh, Pond Boss magazine, dude, I forgot about that. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. It's full of nuggets. Another thing about population dynamics that was striking me is the population dynamics of a fishery hinge on a couple of fundamentals. Is recruitment. How well do the fishery produce? What are your growth rates? What's the mortality? And it's kind of hard to predict that, except when you're able to weigh and measure some fish along the way. If you weigh and measure fish and you see relative weights dropping, then you know that mortality rates are a little bit lower. I mean, you'll never know the percentages, although the percentages are always high, because nature's job is to reproduce enough fish to replace the parents, and that's it. So if a largemouth bass has 35,000 eggs with the intent to replace itself and the other fish, the mommy and the daddy, That means there's a 99.9% mortality rate, which is absolutely normal. And so you look at, with population dynamics, we're looking at, can we feed the fish? Do we maintain a fertility level? Does our habitat model help sustain the population dynamics? That's kind of fish talk to say, do you have enough of the right kind of habitat to increase survival rates of the small fish to get to become bigger nuggets to be more significant in the food chain? So all these things tie together. So when you've got really, really happy water that's not distressing to the fish, and you've got the best habitat for all the size classes of all the different species, you got the right food chain to feed all those size classes of the different species of fish, then your population dynamics are going to roll in harmony. Never happens. So I don't want to throw that at you, but that's just the way nature works. So part of your deal is, how can I monitor it? How can I monitor my population dynamics? Well, first of all, you got to verify reproduction. You can do that with shoreline seine samples in June. You can do that by fishing with a night crawler under a bobber or a small spinnerbait or a crankbait. Catch, weigh, measure, plot. If you don't have our spreadsheet, send me an email. I'll send you a copy of the spreadsheet to help you plot the progress of your fish. The spreadsheet now, with between Jim Allen and John Dyer, has got like 5 species of fish in it, and you can be tracking it. And so that's ways that you can manage it. And John Dyer just pitched tilapia, and so tilapia. So so here's something else about population dynamics. I'm glad you did that, John. Population dynamics is based on immigration and emigration, I or E. So you got fish that are coming in by reproduction or by stocking, and you got fish that are leaving. So when you start putting all that stuff together and trying to figure it out, stocking tilapia in certain ponds where it's legal, you can increase survival rates of your young of the year bluegills. So when you start thinking about all these different things you can do to bolster the dynamics of your fishery, then the end gain is you're going to see much, much better growth rates and larger individual sizes of those fish that you're trying to manage for. So, it's a complicated matter, but when you start drilling down into it to simplify it, it's supplying everything that all your fish need for all sizes and all species. If you can do that, then you're going to have the healthiest population dynamics. I'm going to tell you the odds of that happening, pretty low. But the odds of you thinking about it, pretty high. The more that you think about it, then the more that you can do it, the more likely you are to succeed with it. If you have not subscribed to Pond Boss, please do that. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. It's full of nuggets. So guys, I'm going to wrap it up and just tell you that I really do appreciate you guys watching me, which it fascinates me that there's this many people that care about it and they're interested in it. And you know what? You help keep my brain active. So I love sharing what I know, and I love hanging out with you. Adios for now.
Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.